Good morning. We are getting ready to go live. It's our first live of the fall, fall 2024. It's actually fall. It felt like a very long summer for some reason. But excited here on the East Coast. Nice. Hey, Dr. Mason, I see you here. One of our new partners, Noir Yoga and BK, is hanging out with us. I see Karina is here. Great. So let's get started and we will chat with her in just a few seconds. So let's get this sorted.
An IG Live, right? Because it's live. So we'll do our best. All right, let's see here. Okay.
Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Good
How are
morning.
you?
I'm excellent.
I never know if this is going to work, honestly.
Yeah.
I hit all the buttons and go.
Well, this is
Will work.
my first time, so I'm very excited.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can you introduce yourself before we start?
Sure. My name is Karina Blackstone, and I am the owner of Hot Yoga for You in Rockville Center, New York.
And so you reached out a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, and you were sharing your story of how you became the owner of this yoga studio. So the studio's been around for many, many years, right? And you took ownership 3 or 4 years ago, is that right?
Actually, so I took over in July of 2022.
Yeah.
But this studio has been in the Rockville Center community for 21 years. So before I took it over, it was here for 19 years. It survived COVID. And so I've been very fortunate and grateful to be the owner for a little over 2 years now.
So what made you decide, especially going through COVID, that you're like, I'm going to own a yoga studio now?
Well, so it wasn't planned.
Okay.
It wasn't planned. It wasn't planned. So I started coming to yoga when I was about 23 years old. So that was probably like 19 years ago, actually almost 20 years now, to be honest with you. And I would come here all the time to do the Bikram yoga, which was 90 minutes at the time. And life just happened, right? Like, everything happened in life. I went back to school for my master's. I had a divorce. I have a child. And but I always was able to come back to my yoga practice, right? This was my home studio. I only live about 7 minutes away. And then when I found out, like I said, a little over 2 years ago, that the studio was for sale, then I said, okay, I have to take this risk. I was about 40 years old, and I said, it's either now or never. I am a single mom, so I said, okay, I'm just going to go for it. And at the time, I was teaching 7th grade middle school science. And at first I tried to juggle both. And it was just nearly impossible. So then this year, as of January, I've just been managing and running the studio. So yeah, so it wasn't planned, but at the same time, I knew that it was going for sale, and I just couldn't imagine, the studio not being here. You just never know if somebody would take over and maybe change it into something else, or maybe if it didn't sell.
Right.
So I did take a big risk, and I decided to buy it, and it's been quite a journey, but a really exciting one.
Wow. I mean, it's such a massive change from being a teacher and then being a small business owner. I mean, that's
beyond.
Did you have any preparation? Did you have friends advising you? Had you taken a small, I know. I didn't do any of that either, but I want
okay, good.
Do.
I wish I did, but it's okay, right? I've learned so much in the past over a little over 2 years. And no, I did not. I came into this, and I really did not know much. All I know is that I was passionate about yoga. I'm very dedicated and devoted, and I was going to do whatever it took to just make this place thrive. So there was a lot of work that I had to do when I came in. A lot of renovations. It's a big space. It's an older building, so it needed a lot of TLC. So I came in here and that's exactly what I did. I poured, my heart and soul into it. And it's been so rewarding. The community here is absolutely incredible. So, I'm actually standing in a room that used to be the old check-in area. So this space behind me is where people would come in. There was 3 changing rooms here, but then we decided to, I decided to make this a non-heated studio. So now we offer, for example, yoga sculpt here, restorative yoga. So there was just a lot of work to be done throughout the space. So I focused on that for probably the first year. And then I've just been working on, just adding more to the schedule in the past year and growing our team of instructors. So yes. So no, I did not have any experience. However, obviously I'm a teacher. It's my background. And right before I purchased the studio, I had gotten my educational leadership master's. So that was my second master's degree because I was going to go into administration. But obviously this popped up. So but I've been learning, I've been going to different teacher trainings, anything I could do to just learn more about the business. And so now I do have, I have people who consult me and help me out so that we can, so that I can grow the business and make it the best that it can be.
And I love that because I think you had said in your email, so you expanded. So you were one studio and now you have the non-heated as well.
Correct. So right behind me, right. So we have a heated studio that holds about 60 people. This studio that I'm standing in holds about 30. So yes, we did expand and it was the same space. It was just making better use of it.
I love
it is a large space.
And I love that you doubled down. You're like, I'm going to take this on and I'm going to make it bigger. So you didn't sneak into it. You kind of were like, I'm here, I'm doing this.
Yeah. That's me. I'm an all in type of person. So it's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all. And and ever since, like I said, since this year has been the full year that I've just been devoted to the studio. I don't know how I did it before because exactly a year ago from today, I was still teaching and running the studio, and I have a 15-year-old daughter. So that's a whole nother job in of itself. So yeah.
So what has been the thing that has surprised you the most going from teacher to studio owner? I mean, that's a whole lot of things that I'm sure you expected and anticipated some of the things, but was there anything you're like, oh, that's surprising to me?
So I have to say that it's a very grateful community, right? So when I would come in as a teacher, I started my classes at 7:08 in the morning, right? And I had to teach earth science a double period to 7th grade students. Not as appreciative. It was kind of like a thankless job. It was like, okay, I'm here to teach you about rocks and minerals. And they weren't, so I made it as, so it wasn't as, so versus here, I come to the studio and it's just such a different energy. So that definitely surprised me because you don't often find work or places where you go and it's just like, no, it feels great here. Like, so I come in and if I'm behind the counter, they're like, good morning, how are you? Everybody wants to be here, right? And so that's the huge surprise, right? I was working all this other time, in a school and, whether it was the students or other teachers, not all of them wanted to be there versus here, everybody wants to be here, right? They're taking that hour for themselves to come here, take care of themselves. And like I said, there's just an overflowing amount of gratitude, whether it's my instructors, whether my students, and it's just this sense of community that unfortunately I really didn't have when I was teaching. I loved, I love a lot of my old coworkers and whatnot, but it was just a different environment. We're dealing with middle school students. They have a lot going on. Versus here, everybody has a lot going on, right? But they're just ready to disconnect, right? They're leaving their cell phones in the cubby and they're going into that room. It doesn't matter what's going on and they're just taking that time for themselves. And so that was definitely surprising. Like coming to a place of, it's like, it doesn't feel like work. So I work more now, right? Because I could work 7 days a week. The studio is open 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But it doesn't feel like that. So like another surprise was when I would go to school and I would work, Monday through Friday, I was drained by Friday. Here, it's not like that, right? It's like, you know, you don't want to leave, you know, you want to stay for the next class. And I see a lot of my students, they'll be like, no, I'm going to stay for the next class, or I'm going to see you in the afternoon. I'm going to come back.
Right.
So that was definitely something very different, which I'm very grateful for, right? That when here it's just, I mean, what other job do you hear of? Like, oh no, this is such a positive environment. This is, you know, they're so full of gratitude. You know, every time, you know, students see me, they're giving me some sort of praise or compliment, and it just means the world to me. You know, they're just telling me how they feel, and they're like, thank you for doing this, or thank you for doing that. And I'm just doing my job, right? I'm not, you know, here I am, and I'm like, well, no, I'm replacing the bathrooms, or I'm renovating the shower, or, you know, I'm replacing the speakers, whatever it may be, and I'm just doing my job. And here they are, and they're just so grateful. So that's something that was very different. You come in here and you're like, wow, it's a totally different energy, which I really appreciate.
Have you still, you're, like you said, you have a 15-year-old, you own a studio, you run a studio. Has your personal practice changed in any way since you started owning the studio? Do you still have time for your personal practice?
So I appreciate you asking that. So, well, now that I do own the studio, like immediately I was able to take a lot more classes, right? Because so at the beginning I was able to take a lot more classes, also because I didn't have, you know, I wasn't in the studio as frequent as I would have liked to be, right? Because I did have a full-time job. You know, I was raising my daughter and whatnot. So I couldn't make the practice as much. But here it's like, well, I'm going to be checking in the class. It was like yesterday, for example, right? Well, I'm going to take the 4:30 class. So I am able to practice more frequently. I also like to just take classes of different teachers, right? So I have a nice staff. So I like to pop in their classes just to show support. And it depends. I mean, last week was a very busy week for me. So I had a lot of meetings. So I couldn't come as often, right? And so that happens sometimes, right? You're so busy taking care and managing, and again, being a single mom, that's a lot of work, right? In the afternoons, it's like my daughter has kick line dance, soccer, you know, and so it's like I'm driving here and there, and there's a lot of events going on. So it depends on the week. But normally I definitely, since I've taken over the studio, I've definitely increased my practice.
Good.
And because we offer so much now, right? I'm able to create a schedule. I'm like, oh, okay, let me add some more classes and see, you know, I do have a little bit of control over that. So
what do you find is the most, you said you added a lot of classes. I mean, you have something like 38 classes or something that you're offering. What is the most popular class in your community?
Okay, so we started off as, like I told you, this was originally a Bikram studio at 90 minutes. So the Hot 60 is always very popular, the traditional 26 and 2. But the newest thing that's very, very popular is Hot Pilates.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've never even heard of that.
So we added Hot Pilates this year. And I've had some instructors go to teacher training. I just had 2 other staff members this past weekend go to teacher training. So Hot Pilates has been very popular in the studio in all of 2024. We're going to continue to add it. The other class that has become very popular is Yoga Sculpt. So that's a new class that I added this summer, right? It came on the schedule permanently in last month in September. And so in this room, we have the weights and we run a yoga sculpt class, which is very popular and a lot of fun. But of course, all of our, you know, vinyasa classes, our yin classes are very popular. But the 2 newest ones are the Hot Pilates and then most recently the Yoga Sculpt.
Wow. I love that. I've never even heard of it's floor. It's not reformer, right?
No, it's on the mat. Right, but you're in the heated room.
Right, because that'd be hard with a machine. And that's a lot.
A little dangerous.
Right. hot machinery and people sweating is probably not a good combination.
No.
I love that. Do you have any retreats or anything coming up? Do you do teacher training?
So we did host a teacher training the first summer that, in July 2023. It is something that we would like to do in the future. So stay tuned. Definitely some teacher trainings in the future that we'd like to host here. Also stay tuned for a retreat probably coming either sometime late 2025 or 2026.
Yeah.
However, I do have some teachers that do run their own retreats, and we always promote them here.
Right.
Yeah.
What is your dream retreat location?
I would say probably Central America. So my parents are from Central America.
Yeah.
They're both from El Salvador, and the weather is perfect.
Right.
I've always said, I go, I don't need a hot room.
Right.
I said, this is perfect weather.
Yeah.
I could just go outside and practice hot yoga. So I would have to say probably Central America. It's where my parents are from. I think it's beautiful. The scenery is gorgeous. There's mountains, the water.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. We'll see if we can make that happen.
What do your parents think now of you being a small business owner and a studio owner?
So my mother is very, very proud of me. Unfortunately, a few months after I purchased the studio, my dad did pass away. So I purchased studio July of 2022, but November of 2022, he did pass. He had been struggling with Parkinson's and dementia. And, he was living in El Salvador the last 3 years of his life. It was just better care, quality of life, much warmer. He was outside a lot. So, but I know he's so proud. I have to say that a lot of my personality comes from my dad. So if you see the studio, if you see it so organized, you can ask any of the students who attend here. They're like, Karina is very particular. That all comes from my father. He just, he said, Karina, if you're going to do something, you do it at least 100%. And that's what I do. I give it my all. And you just keep going. He's like, you don't quit, you don't give up. And that's exactly. So I've taken everything that he's taught me. And like I said, from the way I fold the towels, from the way I roll the rental mats, that's all my dad. He was just very, very meticulous, attention to detail. And I'm so grateful that he gave me those values and skills because, now owning a business, it's come so in handy, right? You have to stay on top of everything. And for that, yes, I always think of my father. I just feel that he's with me, and I do believe that. Like I've been in the studio before and I'm like, no, I know my dad's here, and he's just, he's helping me out because I've gone through a lot here. And I know there's somebody else that's watching over.
Yeah. I love that. He's infused in every part of your studio and in the space.
Yes.
Little
right, like from like the bulletin board, like I said, to just the rental towels being folded. Like every little thing is definitely infused by my father. Yeah.
And I was going to ask because you went through a lot of stuff in a very short period of time, like a job change, a career, family, all these changes. What's the first thing that you go to when things feel maybe a little bit overwhelming? Do you have like a mantra or a meditation or a friend?
So I do practice transcendental meditation. So every day of my life, I do start my day with my meditation practice. That's how I start. Even if I have to, when I was at school, I would just wake up about 30 minutes earlier and I practice. But I have to say, so it's interesting you said that about all my life events. And I've always felt that my yoga practice has always been my constant, right? So like you said, like I went through a lot of life changes, right? And one of the biggest life changes, which I'll share, it's a little personal, but I had just broken up an engagement the month prior to closing in the studio. Yes. Okay, so
you had a lot
to say the least, right? And so, I always felt that regardless of what was going on in my life, I would go into the hot room, right? And I had to say it was a hot class. I would go into the hot room and I'd take that class. It would normally be a hot 60 class. Now it could be any class, but I would take, like my yoga practice for that 1 hour. I'm focused on myself, on my postures. And I get out of the room, it's 60 minutes later, and nothing in my personal life has changed, right? Nothing. But I've changed, right? And it's like, I just feel better after 60 minutes of practicing in that room. And, it just makes the world of a difference. So for me, when I knew that the studio was up for sale or, the certainty of the future of the studio was uncertain, actually. So I said, no, this is my opportunity. Like I said, it was a huge risk, but I said, if I'm going to take one, I might as well take it now. I've always wanted to own a business. And it's something that I'm passionate about. And I said, you know what? It's like, no matter what is going on in my life, right? Because then, you know, trust me, so many things have happened life-wise in the past 2+ years and so forth. But I come out of that room and I feel better, right? The explosion is still out there. It's still there, right? This dust hasn't even settled, but I've settled, right? I've calmed down. And so for me, that's why I said, no, I'm going to make this investment and I'm going to give it my all. And because I just know that yoga has helped me so much, right? It's been my constant, right? Like I've had pets before and they've passed but here I've had this constant yoga practice no matter what. And this is what I tell my students. I said, no matter what, you can always go to your practice. And listen, everything around you won't change, but you'll change, right? And you'll feel so much better. And that's what it does for me. So here I am. And I'm just like, when I'm going through my stuff, I'll go in that room. Sometimes, like, you know, I'll just sneak in the back or, you know, whatever it is, like if I'm going through a little bit of a tough time, but I need the room. It's, you know, and then it'll be that instructor that's teaching. And it's just what helps me cope with everything, right? To just, you know, for example, my daughter, she knows that I'm working a lot. She's got a crazy schedule. And I'm like, Lily, I'm going to take a 45-minute class. And she's like, okay, mom, yes, you do that. And it's just like a reset, you know, because we like our hot Pilates is 45 minutes and our yoga sculpt is 45 minutes. So, you know, for our New Yorkers that are busy and you know what, we get it in, it's a total body workout and you just move it through your body. It just feels so great.
And how amazing that, you know, all you have to do is, and I say only 45 minutes, but when you think of the grand scheme of things, to commit 45 minutes out of your day, out of your 24 hours to make it better, right? And it's cumulative, right? So that you know that it's like a little bit every day that's just going to help the rest of your day be better. And then the people around you be better. And it's just sort of this trickle effect that, you know, you invested the time in yourself and these 45 minutes and it's just the benefits are just never ending, right? This is why we love this practice so much, because it does that. Do you remember your first yoga class that you ever took?
I do.
Did you love it? Because I know some people I've talked to are like, it wasn't for me, but you know, so I'm always curious.
I know exactly where I was, right? So we have 2 doors for the hot studio. And I was in the door kind of further away now, closer to our back changing area. I was in the second row. And I remember it was the previous owner teaching the class, right? And it was a 90-minute Bikram class. Again, I was 23 years old and, you know, you go out. And I'm going through the class and I see everybody around me and I'm like, oh my God, I had to sit out. They don't let you know, you can't leave the room. They say, commit to the room. So I'm sitting there. All I kept thinking, I was like, whoa, I must be so toxic. I go, what do I have in here? It was just like, I was like, what demons are inside of here? Like, it was just so something I never experienced before, right? Because again, think about it. I'm in my early 20s, you know, I've gone out the night before probably. It's just like, you know, and all of a sudden you have to be here for like 90 minutes in a hot room and you're like, what is going on? So I remember, you know, the instructor just coming over to me, be like, you're okay, just sit down and just stay seated. And that's what I did. But what happened? I would watch everybody around me and I'm like, no, they all must have been here. There's no way that and they said that. They're like, no, we've been practicing, you know, we all had, and again, it was just that encouragement and motivation. And and they keep saying, just keep coming back. Just keep coming back. And it's so true. You keep coming back. I mean, listen, for some people, the heat is not for them. But again, you know, my parents were born in Central America. I was born here in New York, but I have that warm blood in me. So I love the heat, right? I can't get enough of the heat now. It took some time to adjust to it, but you'd be surprised. Like if you commit the first month to really having a consistent, regular practice, you'd be surprised how quickly your body adjusts. And then living here in New York, where 10 out of 12 of our months are pretty, you know, mild and on the chillier side, it feels great, you know? And then when it's the summer, you're like, oh, I've got this. You know, I could do this, you know, it's not a big deal. You're like, bring it.
And I love that you share that because, you know, it can be an intense experience, right? It's not always, butterflies and rainbows. Sometimes this practice asks us to really dig deep, and just to kind of get through these things that we need to work through eventually. So I'm glad you didn't run screaming from the room and it led you on this trajectory.
Well, listen, I was screaming inside,
Right.
and there was a lot of different emotions going on inside that I had never experienced before. And again, it's just yourself in that room. Right. So you're just sitting with yourself, standing with yourself. And that's something that I don't think, at least for myself, I didn't really have an opportunity to do before, right? Like we're just so distracted. We're go, go, go. And all of a sudden here, it's like, no, you just have to be with yourself, and your mind is going crazy.
Especially at 23, your mind, when you're 23 and then you're in your 40s, it's a very different place to be.
Well, if you want to know a little bit, so I actually found the practice because at the time, my daughter's father he was deployed in Iraq, and he said, Karina, you need to find a hobby. He goes, because back then it wasn't like now, right? We didn't have we had cell phones. But I would never know when I would hear from him. He was in, he was in the heat of it back in 2023. 2003. And so I found this practice, and I had a daily practice. I would come to the 9:30 class, 90 minutes, and it really just helped me out during that time. So, from the onset, it's just, this practice has been a life changer.
Wow. I love that. And it's a journey, right?
Yep.
So how it's evolved from you sat in that first class, like with all the demons screaming in your head, right? To now being, a studio owner and creating this and continuing the community, and thank goodness that you did that. I'm sure like everyone has been so grateful that you took it.
Well, it's funny because again, I started about a year or two after the studio opened, and I had a very consistent practice, so consistent that I got pregnant at 26. I was almost 27, and I practiced up until the night before I gave birth. Yes. So people remember me. I had a student the other day, she goes, Karina, she goes, I used to practice behind you like 17 years ago. And I was like, what? She goes, yeah. And then people remember, there's people who had gotten me baby gifts almost 16 years ago, and they still practice.
Wow.
Yes. So some of them were very happy, very, very happy. Yes.
It almost like, hearing that, there was no way you couldn't have the
exactly.
Studio.
Exactly. Right. Yes.
Your baby was basically like created like in that space. Does your daughter practice?
She does. She does.
Oh,
right now, she's a little bit busy. She actually founded the yoga club at her school this year because so she will be here more often. Like I mentioned before, she does do dance, kickline, and soccer at the moment. So as soon as like soccer ends and then the kickline season ends, then she'll be able to practice a little bit more frequently. But yeah, so she started, her favorite is the Hot 60, the Bikram 60-minute class.
Yeah. And I love that kids now in high school have access to yoga. When I was in high school, there was no yoga class in my high school. Like it just wasn't even an option. And now kids these days have so many more opportunities to start earlier, which is so amazing.
Right. So she's a junior in high school. And this year, instead of taking physical education, she's taking yoga. Yeah. So they'll be coming in here into this room and practicing here and there, taking field trips to here. So that'll be something fun. And
I love that. I love it. Karina, it's been so amazing chatting with you. Is there anything that you want to share, the future of your studio? Anything that you want to share that you just want to share?
So I do want to let everyone know to stay tuned because I'm always, my gears are always turning in my head. So next month, stay tuned for some new classes. The Heated Vinyasa practice has really grown in this studio, and one of our instructors is taking a special workshop soon, and next month we'll be offering a new class called Primal Flow. So so it's a vinyasa class. So that'll be a new class. And then next year at the end of next year, there's a lot coming. But for next month, I plan on hosting our first annual Yogis Giving on Saturday, November 30th. Yes. So
what is that exactly?
So it'll be the first time that we do it. I have to still let the community know,
Right.
but it'll be on the last Saturday of November, and it's kind of like a potluck, and it's going to be open to the entire yoga community. We're going to set up the tables here and just kind of gather together and, you know, reflect and enjoy some leftovers.
I love that. I love it. I think it's just so beautiful to hear that that's what's happening, and that you've taken this over, and that you've continued the community, and you're growing it even more. And I'm so happy to see this happening. I mean, when we went through COVID, it was a dark time, you know, on so many levels, and so many studios closed.